Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and if this is your first time on this channel, you are highly welcome. In today's video, I am going to be sharing with you how to draft a Princess Dart Bustier pattern with keyhole effect. So if you're interested in learning something like this, keep on watching. Please hit that subscribe button if you're not yet subscribed. Like this video, drop your comments, share this video with your friends, and turn on your post notification bell so that you'll be updated whenever I post new videos. And without further ado, let's jump straight into this tutorial. We are going to start by drafting the front pattern using this brown pattern paper. So first things first, I'll come to the edge and I'll rule out a straight line which will serve as my shoulder line and my starting line. Next, I'll go ahead and impute my vertical measurements. For my bust point measurement, I am working with 10 inches. And for the under bust measurement, I'm working with 14 inches. And for the half length measurement is 16 inches, but add extra half inch for seam allowance. Alright, so I'll go to the other side and duplicate the same thing. 10 inches for my bust point, 14 inches for my under bust, and 16.5 inches for the half length. And I'll connect these lines using my straight ruler. After connecting the lines, I'll come to my shoulder line like this and impute my neck width and neck depth. For the neck depth, I'm going to be using 4 inches, which is like the standard. And for the neck width, I will be using 3 inches, okay? You can go ahead and just adjust this to your taste. You can make it a v-neck, whatever neckline you want, okay? And I'm just connecting it like this. So next, going to the shoulder line again, I'm going to impute half of my shoulder measurement. I am working with a shoulder of 15. When you divide 15 by 2, you have 7.5. So I'm going to just mark that 7.5 there. Okay, so now from that 7.5 point, I'll come down by 1 inch to get my shoulder slope. So I will just connect that 1 inch point to my neckline like this to form my shoulder slants. Next, we impute our chest line. In order to do this, you either divide your armhole measurement by 2 or your bust measurement by 6 plus 1.5 inches, and you mark that from that 1 inch point there. Alright, so after marking that down, I'm just going ahead to confirm that I have my shoulder measurement right there so that my line will be straight when I am connecting. So this is me connecting my straight line using my ruler and extending this part out to form my chest line. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is label these lines. This is my chest line, this is my bust point line, and this is my under bust line, and this is my waist line. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is just extend that my chest line, okay? Extend it out. I forgot to do that earlier. The next thing we are going to do is measure out this our armhole line and get the midpoint. So I'll divide what I have there by 2 and mark it out. Now from this midpoint, we'll go in by half an inch. Now in order to get our armhole curve, we'll impute 1/4 of our bust measurement, and mine is 9 inches. Alright, now what we are going to do is we'll connect these points together to form our armhole. Next, I'll go to my waist area and mark half of my bust band measurement. I'm working with a bust band of 6 inches. 6 inches divided by 2 is 3. I'll mark that on the waistline and somewhere around the bust point line like this. And I will connect these points using a straight ruler. Next thing to do now is to impute our darts, okay? So coming to this bust band line on the waistline, I'm going to be marking half an inch on this side of the line. I'll also be marking that same half an inch on the under bust line. Now on the other side of the line, I'm going to be marking 1 inch on the waistline and 1 inch on the under bust line. This is because I'm not working with a big bust. Now I'll go to the bust point line and I'll come down by 1/2 inch and I'll go up by 1/2 inch. You can mark 1 inch there or 3/4 inch depending. The essence is to eliminate pointy ends. We don't want our bustier to be pointed when we are done making it. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is connect these points together using the straight part of my ruler and also a slight curve. Okay, so for the waist to the under bust line, we are going to be connecting it using a straight ruler, and now from the under bust to that 1/2 inch mark that we make below the bust point line, I'm going to be using a slight curve to connect that like this. In order to draw in our princess curve, we are going to come to this armhole area and we'll measure out what we have. Okay, so taking my tape, I am measuring out what I have. I have about 8.5 inches. So what I'm going to do is I will divide that number by 2 and I'll mark that down. Okay, so 8.5 divided by 2 is 4.25 and I have gone ahead to mark that down. So what I am going to do now is bring my curved ruler and draw a curve to meet that 1/2 inch point above my bust point line. Okay, so you can do this using freehand, you can do this using your curve. Okay, so now the next thing I am going to do is I'll come to this my armhole. Okay, on this princess curve that we just drew, I'm going to mark 1/2 inch on both sides of that line. Okay, and I'll connect those points back to that 1/2 inch point above my bust point line. I hope this is clear enough for you to understand. Next, I'm just going to go in and shade this part out. Okay, this shaded part or portion signifies the portion that we'll not be needing on this pattern. We're going to cut it out, we'll throw it away, it is not useful to us at all. Next, we impute our horizontal measurements. Remember, we already marked out 1/4 of our bust measurement on our chest line, so I will just mark the same thing down there on my bust point line. So going to my waistline, what I'm going to do is mark out 1/4 of my waist measurement, which is my waist measurement divided by 4, and I have 8 inches, which I am going to mark down now. Next, we'll have to replace this dart. Remember that this shaded portion is going out of this pattern. We have to replace it at the side. So we are going to measure out what we have there, which is about 1.5 inches, and replace it at the sides so that we don't have any shortages. Okay, next I will add my seam allowance. Okay, I'm using a seam allowance of 3 inches. You can use a seam allowance of whatever inch you want, but this is Nigeria and you will hear clients telling you, make sure there is enough allowance on my dress. So all right, so now the next thing I'm going to do is go to my chest line, and as you can see, there is a little dart under my chest line. So I'll measure that out, which is approximately, I think, about 1/2 inch. And I'll also measure out the dart on my armhole line, which is 1 inch. I'll add that together and also replace it at the side, and I'll go ahead and add my 3 inches allowance. Okay, so next we are going to just connect these points together. At this juncture, our pattern is almost ready. So going to this my armhole line, okay, on the lower side, okay, I'm going to be extending it by 1 inch. You can extend it by 1.5 inch. This is to avoid shortages when we are sewing this pattern up. This the side piece of this pattern is always shorter than the center piece of this pattern. So if you do not extend the side piece of this pattern at the armhole area, you're going to have shortages when you stitch it up, and trust me, it is not going to be a pleasant experience. So what I'm going to do now is I'll connect this point to the chest line to form my new armhole line, and that is the armhole line that we're going to be working with. Okay, and as you can see, our Princess Dart Bustier pattern is ready. The next thing we need to do is figure out our keyhole. Okay, so to do this, we'll come to this armhole line. You see that upper dart leg, we'll go up by 1 inch. You can go up by 1.5 or 2 inches, okay, but I'm going up by 1 inch. Now we are going to figure out, you know, where our keyhole is going to sit. I am going to be marking 7 inches, okay, 7 inches, because this baby girl doesn't want to show too much flesh. If you want to show plenty flesh, you can go down, you can go up, okay, depending on what you want. So I'm going to be connecting these points together like this. After connecting, guys, the next thing we are going to do is determine how open we want our keyhole to be. So for me, I am going to be using, let's say 1 inch. Okay, I think I marked 1.5 inches, okay, but I think I adjusted it to 1 inch, okay, but it doesn't matter. If you're looking to not show too much flesh, 1.5 inch is still fine, 1 inch is still okay. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'll connect that 1.5 inch point to meet my upper dart leg on my armhole area. Okay, so after connecting it, I am going to shade that part out. So this part that I am shading out is our keyhole. That is the part of our dress that is going to be open to give us that keyhole effect. All right, the next thing we are going to do is we'll trace this part out. Look carefully. You see this part that I'm pointing out like this, okay? We're going to trace it out onto a fresh pattern paper. Okay, but before we do that, I am just going to go to the shoulder area and I will extend that part by 1/2 inch, which will serve as my shoulder seam. Okay, shoulder seam allowance. Okay guys, so I'm going to bring a fresh piece of pattern paper and I'll put it under this my pattern. I will use it to trace out this my yoke area. Okay, this my yoke. Remember that I showed you where we are going to be tracing out earlier. So what I'm going to do is I'll bring a tracing wheel and I'll use it to trace out this yoke area. So I need you to watch carefully so that you see the areas that I'm tracing out. So guys, if you don't have this tracing wheel, please don't sweat it, don't even stress yourself. Use a pencil. Okay, use a pencil to trace it out. Just exert more force, okay, and by the time you lift your pattern paper, you will see the lines, okay, clearly enough for you to, you know, trace it using your marker. So after tracing, guys, this is what I have. As you can see, the lines are very clear and visible. So I'll put this aside and I'll cut out my pattern. Now look carefully so that you see the areas that I am going to be cutting on this pattern. Okay, these are the areas that you need to cut. Just watch carefully. All right. So after cutting, guys, I am going to bring back that yoke that we traced out earlier and I'll be using my marker to just make these lines visible. After tracing it out, this is what we have. The next thing I'm going to do is add 1/2 inch seam allowance to the lower part of this yoke, and after doing this I will cut it out using my paper scissors. And after cutting, guys, our front pattern is ready. So bringing my side piece and my center piece, this is what we have. As you can see, it's beautiful and it's very simple to recreate. Okay, so this yoke is just going to overlap it like this and you can see that open area. That is our keyhole effect. Okay guys, by the time we cut this, it's going to be looking so beautiful. So here, guys, I have gone in to draw my green lines, wrote down my annotations indicating how many pieces I should cut. So the next thing I'm going to do is put this aside so that we can draft our back pattern. For the back pattern, I'll be using this fresh piece of pattern paper. So going to the edge, I'm just going to rule a line like I did for the front. This line will serve as the starting line and the shoulder line. So the next thing I'll do is to impute my vertical measurement. Okay, so from this starting line, I'm going to be marking my bust point line, which is 10 inches. Okay, so I'm going to mark my 10 inches down there and I'll be marking my 1/2 length, which is 16.5 inches like we did for the front. So going to this side, I will duplicate the same thing, 10 inches for my bust point line and 16.5 for my half length line. We will not be needing our under bust line for the back pattern. So I am going to be using my straight ruler to square these lines out like this. Next, coming to this my shoulder line, I am going to impute my neck width, which is 3 inches. Make sure you use the same neck width that you use for your front. And for the neck depth, I'll be using about 1 inch. Okay, I'm going to connect these points together using a slight curve. Like we did for the front, we are going to impute our shoulder measurement, which is 7.5 inches. Okay, and now from that 7.5 inch point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch for our shoulder slope, just like we did for the front, and I'll connect this to the neckline. So I am also going to come down by that same 7.5 inch, which is my chest line, like we did for the front. So I'm just going to mark that down there, and of course I'll go ahead and confirm that I have my shoulder measurement so that we can have a straight line, and I'll connect this using my straight ruler. Okay, I'm just extending this line out, which is my chest line, and I'm going to connect this line together, which is my armhole line. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do is, of course, like we did for the front, measure out what we have here and find the midpoint by dividing what we have by 2. All right, and next I am just going to impute 1/4 of my bust measurements like this, which is 9 inches, and I'll connect these 2 points together. For the back armhole, we will not be going in by 1/2 inch like we did for the front, around that midpoint. All right, so after connecting, this is what we have. Our armhole is ready. So the next thing we're going to do is go to the waist area and we impute our waist measurement, which is 8 inches. For the back dart, I am going to mark half of my bust span measurement, which is 3 inches like we did for the front. And for the length of this dart, what I like to do is I will mark 1 inch above my bust point line. Okay, so what I will mark 1 inch above my bust point line, and this will serve as the length of my dart. You can use whatever length you want, but this is what I like to use. So on that point now, I am going to be marking half of my bust span measurement, just to make sure that I have a straight line when I am connecting, and I'm going to be using the straight part of my ruler to connect these points like this. So now, coming to the waistline, I am going to be marking 1/2 inch on both sides of this bust span line to create my dart. So I'll be connecting these points together to form my dart. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is replace that 1 inch dart at the side, and I'll add my seam allowance of 3 inches. Going to the chest line, I'm also going to be adding my seam allowance of 3 inches, and I will connect these points together like this. So after connecting these points together, I will go to my shoulder line and I'll raise my shoulder line measurement. I will add 1/2 inch for my seam allowance. Okay, and after doing this, our pattern is ready. I will just go ahead and cut out this pattern, and our back pattern is ready. Okay, so guys, I realized that I did not leave room for my zipper allowance. There's nothing really wrong with this. When you're drafting your own, leave room for zipper allowance, or you can just cut it directly onto your fabric and add the zipper allowance on your fabric. So guys, I'm just going to be cutting out this pattern like this, and after cutting it out, our back pattern is ready. And this is it guys, our Princess Dart Bustier pattern with keyhole effect is ready. I am pretty sure that if you follow this step by step carefully, you'll be drafting your own pattern in no time. In subsequent videos, I am going to be showing you how to cut this onto fabric and stitch it up. So guys, if you found this video helpful in any way, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel if you're not subscribed. Drop your questions and suggestions in the comment section below. Share this video with your friends and turn on your post notification bell so that you'll be the first to watch my video when it comes out. And until I see you again in my next video, bye guys.